So, hello everyone. Very good morning to all of you. So, we are at the day two of web designing web series for the beginners. So, thank you very much, all of you, for joining yesterday on the day one. I hope you have the wonderful session with Akash. Sir. So, we'll be moving ahead with the next content on today. So, before moving ahead, we have some instructions for the participants. The okay, the first thing is that the feedback and certificate will be provided at the last day at the day 5, and the second thing is that we will have the separate link on the each day. For tomorrow we will have the separate link on the YouTube. We will be mailing you onto your email on tomorrow morning, so kindly check your mail around 9 a.m. tomorrow for the updated link. So okay, thank you very much, all of you, and I would like to invite Akash sir to start today's session. Akash sir, over to you.
Thank you, Iren sir, for the lovely introduction again. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to day two of web designing web series. I hope you are ready to learn the rest of the part of HTML and CSS. Okay, so let's get started with the day two. Yesterday, you know very well, we have seen a basic introduction about the web designing, why web designing is important, and there are some tools are there, and you can use the markup and how to use some elements, let's say font colors and various things, right? So today we will discuss about the HTML element, that is a form table, and then we will start with the CSS. Okay, so I hope you are ready to learn the HTML and CSS. Okay, so good morning everyone, welcome to this webinar web series. Okay, so let me share my screen. Okay, I hope my screen is visible and you can see the screen. Okay, so let's say if we talk about the day two, you know very well, we will discuss for the remaining part of HTML, right? So you know very well, yesterday we have seen a basic tag of HTML, right? And today we will discuss about the important tags of HTML, that is a table, form tag, how to add various controls like text box, radio, drop down, and etc. Right? And then we will focus on the CSS part, that is a cascading style, right? Why it is important today we will discuss. Okay, so let's say first I will give you a demonstration in the PPT, and then I will implement in my computer. I hope everything is good, okay, from your side. So let's say if we talk about the HTML class day 2, then the most important element of HTML is, that is a table and list, right? Let's say whenever you want to display some data in your website, right, the table tag is very important, right? So for an example, let's say if you are fetching some data from your database and then you want to display in your website, so table is very useful tag. Okay, so let's say an HTML table is defined within a table tag, and each table row is defined with the tr. So tr, th, and td, this is the most important element of this table tag, right? So let's say tr is used for the defining the row, th is used for the table header, right? And whenever you are using a table header, your content will be aligned as a center, and it will be also displayed in a bold, right? And let's say if you want to add some data in your table, then we have to use the table td. Means td, that means a table data, we can say it's a cell. So you can see this is my basic example of table. Here you can see we have one table tag. Inside the table tag we have one table row, right? We can say this is my row, which contains a number and name. With the help of th, we can define the header. Let's say you can compare the th and td value. So in th it is a bold and center alignment. I know it's not look like a center because we don't have enough height or width, we can say. Okay, so let's say here you can see we have a td, td1, td2, and again this is my tr. So let me give a demo for this, how this table will work in your HTML. Okay, so don't worry, we have some other attributes, that is bg color, a border color, and cell padding, cell spacing, width. We can define in a two different way. Either we can define in a percentage, or we can define in the pixels, right? So let's say if you define as a percentage, so it will consider as your browser's width, right? So if you specify a specific size, so it will consider as a fixed size that will be a 500 pixels, okay? And we can also align in a center or maybe in right, okay? So let's say, let me give a demo for that, okay? So where is my editor? So my editor is Visual Studio Code, okay? So again, just go to your open folder and you can select your folder. So my folder is stored in the drive web series, and select the folder. As you know, yesterday we have seen how to add hyperlinks, how to add images, and the various tags such as bold, italic, underline, sub, mark, br, and hr, right? So let's say in day 2, we will discuss for the table tag, right? So let's say if I want to create a new page, then simply click on the plus icon and specify the name. That will be a table.html. So just press enter, and here you can write your basic HTML tag. I know you are familiar with this tag, that is HTML and then body, right? So what is next? So first of all, we have to open the table tag. Let's say if I run my page, right? So let's say if I right click, open with my default browser. So here you can see there is no table, right? But you can specify some attributes, right? Border 1. So you can see we have a small border over here, okay? So let's say, for an example, I want to add some record. For that, you have to use one table row. Inside the table row, we have to create either TD or TH. But let's say if you want to display your first row as a heading, then you can go with the TH option, right? So simply you can specify the TH, right? If you don't want to go with the TH, don't worry, you can specify as a TD, okay? So let's say just copy this TH 2 times. I think 2 times is enough. So first will be a number, and second one will be a name, right? So it's done. So if I save this, if I refresh my browser, you will just you can see there is one table which contains a number and name, right? So if I remove this border property, border attribute from this, and now if I refresh this, you can see there is no border, right? So let's say border is good. So undo this command. So it's done. So let's say now I want to add some records, right? So it's simply we have to do the copy paste. So again, the TD. So TD having one name, number, that is a 1. You can specify any numbers, right? And Akash, simply if I save this, if I refresh this, you can see we have a number, a name, and let's say simply just copy paste 1, 2, 3, 4, and done. So it's done, right? So let's say if you want to add some properties, for an example, we have your attributes. Various attributes are there, okay? So BG color, a border color, a cell padding, a cell spacing, a width, and align, right? We can write this kind of attributes, right, in your table tag. So let's say align center. It's done. And you can also add your images inside this cell. You can add images, you can add as a hyperlink, right? You can add any HTML code inside this table, okay? So I hope this part is clear. It's very easy how to add this table, okay? So let's say there is one more concept inside in the table tag, that is a row span and call span, right? So row span and call span are the TD tag attribute, and these are used to specify the number of rows and column cells should span. You know the meaning of the span, right? The row span attribute is for the row, as well as the call span attributes is for the column. And this attribute have a numerical value. For an example, call span 3 will span 3 columns, right? So you can simply implement this, right? It's very easy. Okay, so we have to cover lots of topic actually, so that's why I'm giving an introduction inside my PPT, right? Okay, so if we talk about the HTML list, right? So many times we have to display a various values such as my hobbies. So you can write a traveling, a music, and coding, right? So you have to display your hobbies inside a particular list, and we have two types of lists inside the HTML. So first is unordered list, means we cannot count this number of values, and second one is order list. So let's say if I create new file list.html, right? Simply copy paste and remove this table. Okay. So let's say I want to display my name like programming name like C, C, C++, Java, or PHP, and Android, right? So you know very well, if I run this page, open with default browser, this will display in a single line, right? But actually I want to display in a list order. So we have a UL tag for the unordered list. Inside the UL tag you can use the ally tag, right? And in UL tag we have a various attribute like type. We have a square type, a disk, a type circle. So let me give a demonstration for that, right? So let's say simply I will write that is a UL, that is an unordered list, and then simply you can start the list item, copy paste it here, 1 2 3 4 5, that's it, right? Copy paste. I love this feature, that is a copy paste, right? Without this, we have to write so many code. So if I refresh this, you can see this is done, right? Okay, so what is next? So next is, let's say I want to display the list in an order list. For an example, 1 2 3 and many more, right? So for that, what we can do, we can go for the, see, you can also write like this. For an example, we have three different attributes, means we have one attribute having a different values: circle, square, and disk. By default we have a disk attribute, right? So let's say I want to display my list in an order value. So we have one OL tag. OL stands for order list. So here what we can do, we can simply open the code, and instead of this UL you can simply write OL. OL means order list. So if I refresh this, you can see it starts with the number, that is A 1 2 3 and so on. But let's say I want to start a number with particular value. So here you can see we can start the value with default case number, uppercase number, then lowercase number, that is a Roman values, that is a I, right? We can also start with the ABCD, that is a capital, A small, lowercase, uppercase. So let's say if I specify the type, that is a, right? So it will display my value like this: ABCD EFG, right? So you can specify any value like this. You can specify the Roman values. So that's it. Okay, I hope you are getting this point and everything is going good. Yes or no, guys? You can write in the chat section yes or no. Okay, so what is next? So next is, let's say we can also specify a start attribute. Let's say I want to start a number after particular value. For an example, let's say just remove this type. So here you can see we have a number with 1 2 3, right? And start 11, right? So if I refresh this, you can see this will start with the 11 12 13 14 15 and etc. It's done. I think so. It's very easy. Am I right or wrong, guys? Yes. Okay. Repeat once again. Which one? Okay, let's say If you want to specify particular attributes, let's say if I want to display in uppercase, lowercase of the Roman values, and if I want to display in a ABCD, capital or maybe small, we can use this. Okay. So this is the start attribute. Let's say if I want to start my number with the 11, so you can simply specify the start, that is a 11. Okay. So what is next? So next is, yes, I can see there is one command. What is TD? Okay, so TD is used for the table data. For an example, you can see I want to specify some value over here. So if I remove this value, if I remove this TD tag, so you can see this will be print outside of this data. So I want to display a particular record inside the table. We have to specify inside the TD, right? So TD stands for table data. So we can say it's a cell. So if you want to display something inside your cell, then we have to use a TD. Okay. So let's get started with the next topic. Okay, I think so it's done. The PPT day 2. Okay. So we have lots of PPT for the today's session. I hope I will cover all the topics. Okay, I hope you are okay with this speed. Okay. So what is next? So next is HTML form. So if I refresh this, so you can see the next topic is HTML form, right? So now let's say you know very well, whenever you want to create a sign up form or maybe a login form, at that time we need various controls. Let's say in HTML we have different controls. That is a text box, a radio, a drop down, a file upload, and many more, right? So we can also design our form tag in a Bootstrap also, right? But today we will see a basic introduction about the HTML form. So what is HTML form? So HTML forms are required when you want to collect some data from the website visitor. Okay. So let's say form is a very important tag. Let's say if you are creating a website in a PHP, ASP, JSP, or maybe any server-side technology, first you have to depend on your form tag, right? That is very, very important. I hope you know very well, whenever we are creating a website, form is a very important tag. Form tag having two methods, that is a get and post, right? So let's say if you are, once you are done with the web designing, and let's say you are starting for the web development, you need a basic knowledge of form. Okay. So whenever you want to define a form tag, simply you can start the opening tag, you can close your form tag like this. Okay. So inside the form tag, we can write a various input elements, right? Inside the input, we have a various element that can be displayed in several way depending on the type attribute. Okay. So let's say you can see we have an input type text, which will display as a text box. If you want to get some values from the user, and that will be an email, so you can use the input type email. So this email property will validate whether your email is okay or not. Input type password, right? So input type password will display your password in, you know very well, it will be in a square disk. Okay. So input type radio means, let's say whenever you want to select various values from the users, not various, actually either we can select or. For an example, let's say gender. So at a time you can select single gender, that is a male or female. So at that time you can use the radio. But let's say if you want to use a multiple values, for an example, I love C, C++, Java, right? So maybe I love various technology. So in this case, we can use the checkbox. Okay. So input type file is useful whenever you are uploading some photographs in your website, or maybe some PDF or Word file, or maybe any other file, right? So input type number. So let's say if you are taking some numbers, for an example, age, so you can use the input type number. And input type submit, which is very, very important input type. So let's say if you want to submit your data, then we have to use input type submit. Input type reset means, let's say if you want to clear your values, for that you can use the input type reset. Range means let's say if you want to filter out your values on basis of the range, let's say whenever you are doing a shopping in the local market, so a seller will first ask, may I know your range? So you will specify my range is around 100 to 500. So same thing over here, we can specify the range. Input type date, by default they are providing a date picker. We can say previously we have to create a 3 drop downs, and on basis of that we have to validate whether date is okay or not. But nowadays in HTML5 we have a new properties, that is input type date, input type color, and input type time, right? So don't worry, I will do one thing, simply copy paste, because we want to demonstrate various things. I hope you are okay with this. If you are not okay, then I will write this code. I don't have any problem. Yes, I can understand you want to learn lots of things in the 5 days, and you can dress up the concept again. So simply what we can do, so simply we can write one form tag, right? So let's say form tag, we can specify the method. So by default method will be get, but let's say if you are providing some method, so post is very secure and get is not secure. But yes, get method is very useful whenever you are doing a sorting and searching operation. Okay, so let's say I'm not specifying any methods over here. So here I will write input type text, and don't forget to specify name for each control. So let's say the name will be a txt1, right? So close this tag, and what we need, so whenever you are adding some controls, don't forget to use input type submit button, right? So input type submit is very important to take a values from the users and submit into your server. So if I refresh this, here you can see this is one text box, and I will write my name. So inside in address bar you can see there is no value. So if I click on the submit button, you can see the txt value is Akash, right? So the form tag having a default method, that is a get method, and get is not a secure method. I know why, because your data is visible in the URL. But let's say if you search on the Google, let's say if I open Google, if I type Akash Padhiyar, so you can see Google is also using the get method. You can see the URL. Let's say if it is not visible, simply copy paste, and now I hope you can see your value is visible in your URL, right? Let's say simply if I change this method, that is Akash Padhiyar, instead of this Akash Padhiyar, what I can do, I will write Akash Technolabs. So you can see the text box value is changed, right? It's done. So I can say get is not a secure, but yes, whenever you are doing a searching and sorting operation in your website, right? So at that time you can use a get method. Okay. So what is next? So next is, let's say we can specify the post method. Post is very secure whenever you are passing some sensitive data like your username or password. So at that time you can use the post method. So if I open this again, so simply if I type Akash, so here you can see the value is not visible in the browser. Okay. So what is next? Simply just copy paste this, and I think so without copy paste, let me type this code. I hope I will be a copy paste. So let's say input type a password, then input type a number, input type a email, input type a date, right? So let's say don't forget to change the name. Right now we are actually not going to do any operation with the database, but still we have to change this. Okay, so let's say if I refresh this, you can see we have various text boxes, but it's not look good. So what we can do, we can create a form tag inside a table tag. So you can simply write the table tag, a table having a two different column, one for the your text box and second one for your label. So what I can do, simply create one tr, a td, one td for your label and second td for your control. So simply copy paste and copy paste, right? So it's done. So now you can see it's a proper alignment is there. I know this is only for the first text box, but what we have to do, we have to simply copy paste this code multiple times. So this is for name, this is for password, and then just copy paste. Don't worry, I'm doing just copy paste. Don't worry about this code. I know it's ups and down, ups and down. Okay, it's done. Okay, actually, we haven't write any code, so don't worry. So what we can do, we can specify input type password. We can specify input type number, input type, let's say date, input type email. So here you can specify input type email. So it's done. So if I refresh this website, you can, okay. So if I refresh this website, so you can say it's a proper alignment. It's there. And we can see this is our date picker. So input type date, we can see we have a by default a date picker having a various option for the year selections, right? Okay. So let's say if I click on the submit, there is no action. So what we have to do, we have to specify some validation. Let's say I want to specify some validation, let's say require. So make it require. So it will give you, yes, input tile is also available. I know there are lots of input type is there. Okay, so here you can see this is my text box with validation, right? So if I write something over here, it's done. So this is password, and let's say this is my input type number. You can see I cannot write any characters, right? I can only type the numbers. It's done. Okay, so let's say I want to restrict some values. Let's say the gender, the age will be starts from 1 to max 100. So you can specify the values. So let's say if I type 999, first we have to write this value. See, value must be less than or equals to 100. Okay, and let's say if I type wrong email ID, first actually we have to fulfill this requirement, that is a 99, and then you can see please include an @ in the email address and blah blah blah, right? So you can see in HTML5 we have some attribute like a validation, input type date, input type colors, right? So simply copy paste input type color, input type cal, input type URL, and many more. So if I type input type color, so you can select, we have a selection for the color, and just a second, see, we can select the colors, right? I want to specify particular colors, so simply you can use this. So previously for the date picker and color, we have to use a jQuery plugins. Let's say if I search in the Google jQuery date picker, so there is lots of UI controls are there in a jQuery, and we have to use this kind of jQuery controls in our website. But don't worry, I will also give you a demonstration for this in day 4. Okay. So in day 4, we will discuss about the jQuery, how to add jQuery validation, how to add jQuery data tables, and many more things. Okay. So let's say my input type name, password, number, date, and let's say, let me give you one more controls. That is a checkbox, a radio, a drop down, a file, and text area. That's it. I know there are lots of controls are there. So color, after the color, we can go for the input type file. So you can specify the file, then a radio, input type radio. For radio, actually, we have to specify a value over here. So this will be a mail. And then I hope you are enjoying this webinar very well. You can write in the chat section yes or no. I know it's a very basic things, but yes, the webinar and web series is organized for the especially beginners, right? So that's why we have to cover a basic things also. So you can see we have option for the gender, male, female. Either we can select male or female. But let's say in some cases people are also facing some problem because they are specifying a different name. Let's say here you can see txt1 and txt99. So if you specify a different name, then you can see we can select both the option. I know it's not a good idea, but let's say what we have to do, we have to specify a same name for the radio. Okay, so same thing, we can copy paste as a checkbox. So instead of this radio, what we can do, we can write the checkbox. So I love HTML and the CSS. I hope you also love this HTML and CSS. Okay, I know you are also waiting for this CSS. Yes, so you can see we have HTML and CSS. Either user can select both the option or maybe none of them, right? So that's why in checkbox you can either select or no, but in radio we have to select some value. Okay, so after the checkbox radio, we have one more control, that is a drop down. Let's say to select some CT or maybe some value, especially gender, right? Select. So first we have to specify a select tag, which will give you one option, right, like this. But inside the select, we have to specify some option to select some values. So let's say here I will specify Ahmedabad. Then let's say India. I know it's not good, but let's say this is my Ahmedabad, this is my India. Okay, so you will get your option like this. Okay, and you can also specify a values. Let's say in many times, let's say we are doing a web development in maybe in any server side technology, we have to display something and we have to store in database something different. So for that time you have to use the value attributes, right? So simply you can specify the value attributes over here. So it will display a name that is Ahmedabad, but in database it will store AHM or I and B. Okay, so it's done. So if I refresh this, you can see. Okay, so let's say if I open a particular website that is a OLX or maybe a different website, it's not loading. Okay, so it's done. So here you can see we have a different, just a second. So here you can see it's a drop down is there, right? So let's say if you press Control U, you can see a source code for that. So if you type a select, what is this selection tag? Or you can simply write the options. But actually they are using a different technology. You can see this is a totally JSON base, but it's okay, no problem. We will give you a different different website. Okay, so most of the website having this kind of drop downs with the values for the user and second value for the backend. So we are done with the file radio, a checkbox. Where is checkbox? I think I have overwrite the code. Okay, so last one is a text area. We can say it's a big text box. Okay, so text area, let's say if you want to add your address, right? Or maybe text area. So inside the text area, you can see we can drag this text box like this. Okay, but let's say I want to specify some columns and rows. Then we can specify the calls, that will be a 15. So you can see there is some change, and the rows, it's not rows, it's rows 50. So you can see this is very large text box, right? So we can resize it. but you can specify a 10. That will be a good, right? And I want to specify the calls, and the calls will be around 55, not 555, just 55. See, you can see. So here you can write freely without entering some values. So if we want to print any message instead of number of file chosen in attribute, then what we have to do? Print any message instead of number of file chosen in the file. Okay, so for that you can use a CSS or jQuery. In jQuery we have different controls, right? Okay, so let's say it's done. So this is a basic HTML tag that you can use in your form type. I hope this is done for the HTML. But let's say, let me give a quick tool for from this PPT. So this is input type text. Be with me, guys. It's time to cover this PPT in next 5 minutes. So input type text for the text box, input type email for the email, input type password for the password, input type radio for the radio, right? You can see this is a code and this one is output. Then input type checkbox, you have to write the input type checkbox and your output will be like this. Input type file, you can see this is input type file. Input type number, you can see the mean and max value. Input type submit, which is used for submitting your data, right? So input type reset, if you want to reset your values, right? Okay, and input type color. Okay, so I can see there is one comment, input type color is used for what? So let's say many times a client need a dynamic color in their website. For an example, right now we are working for one of the client, and client needs a daily a new color in his admin panel. So daily he is calling me, hey Akash, I want to change the color of the menu bar, right? So what I did, I have given one control for the input type color selection. So user or admin will select the color, and that color will be stored inside the database. So whenever website is loading, we are first of all fetching a data from the database, and on basis of that, it will change the color of the menu, right? So input type date for the selection of date, input type range, yes. So you can use this range to specify some range. Let's say if you are using a Zabang, Mintra, there is an option for the range, right? See, it's look like this. You can specify your mean and max value. Okay. So these are the default properties that you can use: a placeholder, a mean, a max, right? A required, a steps, and the max, autofocus, check, max length. You know very well we have seen some of the properties: name, size, type, and value. If you want to display a particular default value, for that we have to specify a value attribute. Okay. So finally, this is a text area. Okay. So this is a select tag. Okay. So there is one more comment, sir. What is difference between Visual Studio and Visual Studio Code? Okay. So Visual Studio Code is a free editor which is given and developed by the Microsoft, and Visual Studio is an IDE, right, which is used to create a .NET web application, right? Okay. So Visual Studio is not available as a free of cost, yes, but you can download the community version. It's very bulky size, right? But Visual Studio Code is available in all the platforms, and you can simply download it and you can write a code in any technologies. Okay. So HTML select tag. So you can see we have to select various options, and that's it. I hope HTML part is almost completed. So now let's focus on the CSS. I hope you are ready to learn the CSS. Okay. Am I right? Okay. I'm waiting for your comments. Okay. So up to this, we have seen a basics of HTML, right? It's not basic. I tried to cover almost 70 part of the HTML, but yes, with the help of CSS, HTML is nothing, because let's say if you want to create a good layout or maybe a good colors in your website, for that we have to use a CSS, right? So let's say let's talk about the css. So what is css? Css stands for, what it stands for, you can write in the comment. Css stands for, I'm waiting for your comments. Okay, so css stands for the cascading style sheet. Okay, there is one more comment. Database connectivity is not possible, as I told you yesterday. Again and again, I am saying the same statement. Database connectivity is not possible. Okay, so keep in mind these things in next time. Okay, so let's say, what is css? So css stands for the cascading style sheet, and the css used to design your html tags. Let's say we have one table. Let's say if we are designing a furniture, or maybe some good furniture in your house, so you know very well, we have wooden, that is a totally structure based. To design, we have to use a formica, right? So formica will be available in any designing. So same thing over here. css stands for the cascading style sheet, and css is used to design html tags, right? And css describe how html elements display on web, and with the help of css we can save a lot of work, and it can control the layout of multiple web page all at once within an external site style sheet. Okay, so let's say if we talk about the css, what actually css do. So you can add new looks in your old html documents. So let's say if we talk about the previous website, which is built in maybe 2000 or maybe 1995, right? At that time, the website was totally a basic layout will be there, right? There is no any designing part will be there, because at that time we don't have enough internet connection, right? Okay, so let's say you can completely change the look of your website with only few changes in css code. Okay, so who invented the css? So World Wide Web Consortium, css was invented on October 10, 1994, and maintained by the group of people within the W3C, right? So there are some advantages of css. I know css saves times. Let's say if you want to design a particular layout in all the pages, so css will save your time. This will load your page faster. I know in some of case it will take some time, and easy to maintain your layout. Let's say if customer says I want to change the background color of the website, so normally it will take hardly 1 second, because we are using an external layout. So once I change in main file, it will reflect you all the pages. So we can also do a multiple device compatibility. It says as a mobile device responsive, right? And the global web standards. And one more thing, that is the offline support. We can say we can write in the offline. Okay, so these are the css syntax. Let's say css is quite difficult compared to html if you are a beginner. Okay, the selector points to html elements. So we have a different selectors, class base, id base, or tag base. Okay, don't worry, we will discuss in the next slide. So in the css we have to write the property in the value inside the curly braces. Okay, to separate the various property we have to use a colon, right? Semicolon. Okay, so css declares always end with a semicolon. Okay, so here you can see it's end with the semicolon. Here it's also end with the semicolon. So this is called as a property, and then colon your value. Okay, so let's say let me give you one demo. So for an example, here I'm taking let's start the new code, css1.html. so html entire the, okay, sorry, body. Okay, sorry, I think so, slip off keyboard. Okay, you can say. So let's say this is my h1, right? And now I want to change the color of this h1. I want to change the font size. For that, what we can do, so let's say simply let me give you some theory part, then we will discuss for the practical, because in CSS, we have three different ways to declare the CSS. Okay, so let me give you an introduction for that. So how to add CSS in HTML? So there is one more question: how to add CSS in your HTML? Okay, so let's say we have three different ways. First is an inline style. Second one is an internal CSS. Third one is an external style sheet, right? So inline style means you can write your CSS in your HTML tag. Then the second is internal style sheet, means you can write your CSS inside your HTML page. And then external style sheet means you can write or you can create a separate file for your HTML or CSS templates. Okay, so let me give you a detailed introduction for these three different ways. So first you can see we have one p tag. So inside the p tag we can specify inline CSS. So whenever you want to define inline CSS, for that we have to write a style tag. Inside the style we have to define the key and value, right? Attribute and value. So let's say this is a color, and color having an attribute value is 20 blue, right? So this content will be displayed in a blue color. Okay, so this is the first example of inline. Don't worry, I will give you a demonstration for that. So second is internal CSS, means let's say I want to change a color of all h1 tag which is available in my particular page. So if I type every time inline CSS, it will save, not it will save, it will waste my time, because let's say I have a 10 HTML h1 tag in my single page. So we have to write the same code again and again, maybe up to 10 times, right? So what we can do, we can specify h1 over here, and this h1 CSS will reflect to your all HTML text. That is h1 actually. And the last one is external CSS. For an example, I'm creating a website for one of my client, and the website having a three different page: a home page, about us, and contact us. So I want to reflect the same designing for all the pages. So what we can do, we can create a separate file, and we can call the CSS in each and every pages, right? So these are the three different ways that we can use. So let me give you demonstration for this. Okay, okay, so let's say a second. Okay, I can see. Okay, so let's say how to write this CSS. So let's say if this is my name, that is Akash Padhiyar, right? And this one is Akash Technolabs. Okay, and the third one is Akash Infotech. Okay, so this is done. So what I can do now, let's say if I open this page, you know very well this will display a three different output in h1, right? But let's say if we talk about the inline CSS, to specify the inline CSS, here we can write style. Inside the style, you can see we have various attributes. There are lots of attributes are there. We can also specify a CSS3 properties, right? So don't worry, tomorrow I will give you a demonstration for the CSS3, some effect. Okay, there is most effects are there. So let's say if I specify the color, and you can see we have lots of colors are there. So you can see this is the colors. And if you want to specify, or if you want to select a particular color, then you can also use the hash value. Let's say if I open the Google and CSS color code, right? So you know very well we have a RGB combination, or so I think so. Yes, this is a list of colors. Okay, I think so. Just a second. RGB color maker or picker. So you can see Google is also providing this kind of colors. So you can specify the CMYK. You can get the RGB color combination and hex value. So if you are using a CSS, then you have to specify the hex value, right? So here you can see there is one more. It's will size. Sorry, it's not a. So here you can select the color like this. I love blue color. So just go to here. Yes, I love this blue color. So simply copy this color and paste it over here. Okay, it's done. Okay, so if I refresh this, my page, you can see it's changed. I love this color. Okay, so let's say if you want to specify a different colors, I also love a red color, but yes, you can highlight the red color, dark yellow, right? So color is also important thing. You can select this color. So here you can specify the same style, a color. That's it. It's done. So this is called as a inline CSS. Inline CSS means you can define your property inside your HTML tag, right? But let's say what I want to do, I want to define an internal CSS. For the internal CSS, what we can do, we can define one style tag. Inside the style tag, what I can do, simply I will write h1. So this h1, let's say I love color black. Black is actually it's a default color, so red, right? So if I refresh this, you can see we can see the priority. By default, the first priority will given to the inline CSS. Second priority is given to the internal CSS. See, over here we have specified the inline CSS. That's why the red color is not applied over here. You can see, right? If you want to display your output like this, you can do this. Simply you can specify, and you can, yes, we can do this. And we can also add some extension for the live preview. Okay. Okay. So let's say this is a internal CSS and this one is an inline CSS. If I remove this tag from here and if I refresh this, now you can see our h1 tag color is changed. Why? Because here we have not specified any inline CSS. That's why the priority is set to the internal CSS. So if I refresh this, you can see. Okay, the third option is that is external. Let's say what is external? I want to create a separate file, and inside the separate file I want to specify some values so that I can use that values in a different pages. Okay, so what we have to do, we have to create a new file and we have to specify some values. Let's say just go to here, create a new file, name it. Generally people are using the style.css, right? So you can specify this name or you can specify any name. It's not required, but yes, most of the website having a style.css, so I recommended use the standard name. Okay, so here what you can do, you can write that is your h1. So this is my h1 tag. Simply copy paste and specify yellow. I had this yellow color, it's okay. So let's say I want to specify some body color. So body will be reflect on this part. So body, we can specify the background color, and I love this color. That's it. Okay, and we can also increase the font size, but it's not required. So you can see my separate file is created, and now I want to load this CSS file over here. So inside the head tag, what we can do, first we have to specify the link, and relational will be a style sheet, style sheet. Okay, and type will be a text x/css, and the reference will be href, that is style.css. It's done. So this is link, and that is related as the relation as a style sheet, and you can see this is my reference. So if I refresh this, if I run this in the browser, you can see my color is changed, right? So here you can see my color is totally changed of the background. So let's say if I apply the same code in my different page, that is a demo. that we have done in the first day. So if I replace, if I run this, and you can see the background color is changed, and you can also see the h1 tag color is changed, that is yellow, right? Okay, so what is next? So css1 and demo having the same file. So let's say if I change the color of background color, the tomato tomato color, if I change this color and if I refresh over here, color is changed, it's look good. You can also refresh this, the tomato color is changed in both the files. Okay, so it's done almost. This is a basic concept of the css, that is internal, inline, and external. So let's say if we go to our css1.html, here you can see we have a specify the h1 color is yellow in the external file, right? If you go to your css1.html, here you can see we have specified the color that is a red, and here you can see we have specified color blue. So if I remove this, right, so just be with me. See, if I refresh this, okay, so you can see the second priorities goes to your red color, you can see. But if I refresh, if I delete this code, and now you can see the color will be changed, that will be a yellow. Why? Because inside the style.css we have defined the yellow color. So if I refresh 1 2 3, color is changed. Okay, so I hope you got this point, the property and their priority. Okay, so if I refresh this, or if I write undo, so it's changed. I hope you are clear with the basics of css. Okay, okay, I can see the comments. Okay, just a second. Okay, I can see there is one comment. Please define internal inline css, external inline css. Yes, we have done that. You can see this is my inline, this one is my internal, and this one is external. That's it. Okay, so last 10 minutes, I hope you are ready to learn again. If not, then we can end this session. But I think you are interested to learn more topics, so that tomorrow we can focus on the various controls. Okay, properties. So what is next? The next is css selectors. So this will be a last topic. Don't worry, guys. Then we will end up this web series for the today's session. That is a day 2. Okay. So css selector are used to find a HTML element based on their element name, ID, and class. Okay. So the first will be a element selector, then ID selector, and the class selector. So let's take a demonstration on each element selector. So for an example, this is element selector. So let's say if I specify if I specify the p tag, so this p tag will check whether your p tag is there in or not in your HTML page. If p tag is there, then this will change the text alignment and text color. Okay, so this is called as an element selector. For an example, let me give you a demonstration for that. So where is this p tag? So this is my p tag 1, p tag 2, and p tag 3. So if I specify p, so p is my element selector. Okay, so I can specify the color, and the color will be sandy brown. So if I refresh this, so you can see the color is changed. I hate this background color. Let me change this color again. I love tomato, but I hate this tomato color. Okay, so here you can see the p element will check and it will replace the designing. Okay, so what is next? So next is, let's say, the ID selector. The ID selector is used ID attribute of an HTML element to select a specific element. Okay, the ID of an element must be unique within a page, and the select an element with a specific ID write a hash value we have to write. For an example, you can see here we have specified one id. The id name is demo, right? So let's say if you want to specify a designing for single element, right, only for single element, then we have to define as a id. So let's say if I say this is my id, that is a demo. Okay, so let's say if I specify id, my id. Okay, so this is my id, and for that we have to use a hash symbol, my id. The color is, okay, first time actually I'm using this kind of colors. You can see it's changed. But let's say if I use the same id over here, you can see it's changed, right? But let's say the id, what is use of id? The select element with a specific id, write a particular hash. So if we talk about the class, right, so class attribute select a multiple element. Let's say if you want to specify in a multiple element, so let's say my class, so the class will start with a dot, right? With dot you can define your class. Okay, and then I can specify color. Color will be, the color is very easy to identify. That's why I'm using a color attribute every time. You can also specify the font size, right? Larger, smaller. Okay. So here you can specify the class. Class name is, you can see this is my class. So it's done, right? So for an example, if you want to use a same designing in a multiple control, then you can define the class. Okay. Okay, so let me give a next. So for an example, we can see this is my class. Okay, and you can also specify your colors. As I told you before, we can specify the color in a red, in RGB, and also we can define the color in a hash value. Okay, so that's it for the today. Tomorrow we will discuss about the more in the CSS and also in a bootstrap. Okay, so today you know very well we have seen a various topics. Okay, how to blink a text in different color like blue, red. Tomorrow I will give you a demo in a CSS3 for that. Don't worry. Okay, so I think so that's it for the today. Okay, so it's hand over to the Hiren sir. So guys, thank you so much for joining today, and thank you so much for the day 2. Okay, see you again tomorrow at the same time. If you have any question, if you have any doubts, you can write in the comment section. Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much, Akash, sir, for the wonderful session.
Okay, ID we can define in a single time. I know it's a common question, and class we can define in a multiple times. Okay, so Hiren sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you very much, Akash, sir, for the wonderful session. Now, I would like to ask the participant if they have any question, they can write to the chat box. Otherwise, we'll be winding up the today's session. I think we already have the questions in the chat box. So there are the session was so wonderful and well explained. So we are like not having this too much of questions. So thank you very much, Akash sir.